I'm Eliza. I wrote Eternal Covenant and I was part of the sound team as well. So, Eternal Covenant follows two estranged friends, Jodie and Imogen, who begrudgingly meet up in a church honouring a years old promise to their late friend Tess. Following an awkward start, they discuss how their lives have moved on, eventually accepting the end of their friendship as two very different people. Thematically, the film centres on loss. This is explored through Jodie's relationship with religion, the ending of their friendship, and of course, how each of them have dealt with Tess's death. Acceptance is another important theme that ties the narrative together. When writing this film, my main concern was with the development of the characters. As this is a short film and only a 5-page script, I thought it would be most effective to focus on building a strong sense of these two women and their relationship. In the short time we had with the characters, I wanted to create an understanding of who they are and allow viewers to sympathise with each of them. Friendship breakdowns can be a long and drawn out process, and this experience is something that many people can relate to. Therefore, it was really important to me that neither character was portrayed overly negatively or like they were the only one in the wrong, with the film instead being a snapshot of how relationship breakdowns like this can be mutual and often a lot more beneficial than trying to hold together an unhealthy dynamic. Ultimately, I really was happy with the actors' portrayal of the two characters, and I think their work with our director really brought a lot of energy and life to the script that I think brought to life what I was trying to do when writing it.
As the director for Eternal Covenant, my role throughout the process was varied, being involved in all stages of production. During pre-production, I worked with the cinematographer Andy to establish the film's visual look. I annotated the screenplay, then we worked together to create the shot list. We took inspiration from drama films by Joaquin Trier and Celine Sciamma to give the film a personal, intimate feeling, most notably in the film's church scene with a side profile of Imogen looking away from Jodie, highlighting the distance between them. During pre-production, as a group, we went on location recce's to visit the locations we'd be filming in. My main concern here was of blocking and camera positions, working with both the producer Ailey and Andy to foresee any logistical problems, as well as taking photos on my phone to practice framing for the actual film. I was even able to secure a floor plan of the church to map out where everything would be. Due to renovations done outside the church, we had to change our exterior location to a different church. The group was unable to make a second recce for it, however I was able to visit it in advance of our filming to get a feel for the location and see where the best place to film would be. In the week before filming, we tried to schedule a rehearsal, however one of our actors, Neve, was unable to make it, so we had to do a script reading with just Jodie's actress Hannah. This was still useful, however, as we were able to go over the character's intentions while discussing it with the writer Eliza to see if it fit with her vision. During production, my main focus was on the actors, communicating and rehearsing with them at the start of each day to refine and capture the essence of their characters. I still worked with Andy on camera, helping set up each shot. However, for the actual filming, I mainly left them to it and focused on the performances. After each take, I would talk to the sound team, Eliza and Leah, to see if there are any problems or background noise. In terms of logistical issues, on the second day of filming, there was a van parked where we had previously filmed. This was an easy fix, however, as Ailey and I were able to talk to the team and the driver parked there and had it moved. Another issue was the weather, as on the first day it was raining throughout most of our takes and on the second day it was quite sunny. This meant we had to reshoot most of our footage on the first day and make sure there was still continuity. Thankfully, we were ahead of schedule by quite a few hours, meaning we were able to reshoot them quickly and effectively. During post-production, our editor Finley had to cut some of our planned shots due to them being filmed on the first day and not having been reshot. Thankfully, these were not essential for the film, so it was easily worked around. I reviewed the footage with the editor and was able to have some input in some of the edit choices, like the order of the opening shots. Overall, having seen the finished film, I feel that despite technical issues like the weather, we were able to effectively translate the script into a satisfying and emotionally resonant film.
Hi, my name is Ailey and I'm the producer for Eternal Covenant. So, in the early days of production, Eliza and I worked closely together to develop the script and discuss our vision for the film. We wanted to highlight loss and complex relationships between friends and with religion. Without focusing too much on one religion, we wanted to focus more on the general idea in order to potentially appeal to a wider audience. This film had a long pre-production phase with a lot of logistics to work out before filming, with the most time spent on finding a location. As this is a student film, we had little to no budget, and we wanted to avoid paying for filming access. This was a problem I encountered as many churches are situated in cemeteries, and if we wanted to film there, we would have to pay. Eventually, I managed to find 2 separate churches, one for the interior scenes and one for the exteriors. This was a big challenge as I was getting turned down by numerous places, and the location for our film played a vital part in the narrative, so determination was key here. There were also worries surrounding the weather due to shooting in winter. This gave us difficulties on our first shoot day as the weather would fluctuate between sun and rain, causing issues with the continuity. We ended up having to wrap sooner than expected, and if I were to plan something like this again, I would make sure we were more equipped for the weather, for example, bringing tarp to cover the equipment, or even just rescheduling the whole day instead of going ahead as planned, just to end up having to reshoot everything the next day, which is what we had to do. Overall, I learned a lot while producing this project. Patience really is key, as the longest parts of pre-production, I would say, was waiting for actors and locations to get back to me. I think this applies on set too, as it's important to be encouraging while keeping everyone on track and on schedule, and being patient in a time of technical difficulties helps cultivate a lower stress environment. I found preparation was also very important throughout the production, and scheduling regular meetings with the crew meant everyone was on the same page, and that allowed the actual filming itself to run smoothly when we weren't interrupted by external factors such as weather and traffic. In the future, I would make sure to schedule more meetings with the actors beforehand, as to ensure the directors and the actors were on the same page before the filming date. Working on this film helped show me that assembling a competent and compatible crew is crucial to the success of the outcome, and I think everyone did a great job at helping bring Eternal Covenant to life.
At the very beginning of pre-production for this film, me and Benedict began to create a very specific mood board of shots to draw inspiration from. One shot that particularly inspired us came from Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which in turn borrows from Ingmar Bergman's Persona. We picked this shot not just because it is beautifully composed, but we found it to be very much revealing of the character's emotions in that film, and we thought it would work well in our film as a result. When actually creating the compositions of shots on set, I tried not to rely too heavily on the option to have thirds displayed on the camera screen, as I thought they were slightly distracting and would hold back creativity. This being said, I did use the rule of thirds for many shots, but I just didn't want to rely on them as the only mode of composition. While we did want to have a lighting plan in place at the beginning, the nature of both shooting outside and inside a church, this was just slightly too difficult, so we went for a natural lighting approach instead. I think this works really well. It definitely gives the film more of a visual aesthetic, and in the church there's some amazing natural light cast upon our 2 actors that I'm happy with. We did experience some logistical issues on camera, such as the rain on the first day. However, we were very lucky in that we had a lot of time to spare and we were ahead of schedule, so we were able to go back the next day and reshoot most of it, and it's not apparent in the edit really, so we managed to fix it. I also struggled with the tracking shot that frames the 2 characters leaving the church, just because I wasn't prepared with any stabilisation equipment. So the shot looks quite shaky as a result. I think it is really nice to have a break from just the static look of the rest of the film, so I'm glad we did it regardless. I would be less satisfied if there were clear lighting inconsistencies in the film, but due to the natural light and my careful exposure in relation to it, this didn't provide too much of an issue. I wanted to make the film quite vibrant with colour at the very beginning as well, but as time went on, the natural light and the muted colours as a result of that were very much in keeping with the tone of the script, so I'm happy with that as well. I am personally most proud of the footage we shot inside of the church, as I found there was more room to play around with composition and really get across the dynamics of the characters to set the scene of the film. I'm also particularly happy with the wide shots inside the church, as they just give it a great sense of the space and allow continuity and the editing of that particular scene flow really quite well. Overall, I'm very pleased with my work and the work of my fellow crew members on this film, as I feel that we gave everything a lot of attention and began the process of pre-production as early as possible. Having drafts of the shot list done months before production was also a good idea, as it allowed me to refine and improve upon our original plan as time went on. I also found the script to be particularly engaging and creatively stimulating, and for that I am very thankful to have had the opportunity to work on this production.
Hi, my name is Leah and I was a sound recordist on set for Eternal Covenant. So during the pre-production and the recce in particular, we had a lot of discussions about how we want the sound to sound, and really we want a naturalistic, just basic dialogue recording, The only issue with this is that filming in a church, acoustics, it can be very echoey and the sound can sound very distorted. So using this quote from Tarkovsky from his book Sculpting in Time Reflections on Cinema, he states that as soon as the sound of the visible world reflected by the screen are removed from it, or that the world is filled for the sake of the image with extraneous sounds that don't exist literally, or if the real sounds are distorted so that they are no longer correspondent with the images, then the film acquires a renaissance. So this quote supported our idea of not wanting distorted sound or echoey sound, or we want it to be crisp and clear, or else it could sort of ruin the illusion for the audience. So to ensure that we did this, we practiced a little bit of where the camera placement was going to be, where the actors were going to be placed, and sort of ways that we could get in with the mic as close as possible to ensure that the sound wasn't distorted or anything. And we also decided to use radio mics to further ensure that their audio and dialogue was crisp and clear. Another issue that arose on our recce was where our outdoor scene was being filmed, which was currently being used as a pathway sort of shortcut where a lot of people were passing by. So obviously that can disrupt the audio, disrupt the dialogue, having all these different noises around. So to overcome this, we actually changed our outdoor location to another church that was a little bit more out of the way. People weren't walking by. On the first days of shooting, this was our outdoor scenes. So the only issue that we really had with the outdoor scenes was that we were by a busy road. And during shooting was when the primary school kids and high school kids and whatnot, they got out for home time. So, you know, walking by, they were very noisy, a lot of buses, cars. So the only way that we could really overcome this was to say pause for sound, hold for sound during filming, or just completely do, you know, retakes or do sound pickups. So on our second day of shooting, it was very frustrating because they were actually doing work on the church. So they were doing work on the roof of the church. So when we first arrived on set, there was a lot of banging, hammers, etc. So the way we overcame this was to maybe ask them if they could not make as much noise while we were there. But also, you know, we very much prioritised the radio mics when it came to dialogue. And we had to do many sound pickups for footsteps, etc. And this also helped with the echoiness of the church. So in conclusion for sound, we overcame a lot of our issues by using radio mics, getting the boom as close as possible to actors. We used a dead cat when it was windy, many sound pickups, many hold for sounds, you know. It was a tedious process, but I mean in the end we had good sound, so.
Previously, I hadn't done any sound post-production outside of uni workshops, and this was my first time doing the sound design for a film project. This was an intimidating task, but I've learnt a lot that I will definitely take with me into future projects. Due to just the nature of the film itself, the sound design for this was relatively simplistic and pared back. It didn't require too much embellishment or sound effects, for example, as the focus was mainly on the dialogue. Working with Leah on set and having the planning she had done in the pre-production stages further helped the process. One issue I had was with the consistency between shots. With the exteriors, the wind and the traffic when we were recording meant that some cuts sounded abrupt or unnatural. This is something that we didn't have too much control over on set, but in the post-production, crossfades and layered additional ambiences allowed me to minimise this issue. In some of our interiors, specifically a few close-ups, the heating in the church was particularly loud and inconsistent with the rest of the shots. Unfortunately, I couldn't use the recording from an alternate take or a different shot size, as the dialogue was said a bit differently, so these wouldn't have lined up with the video. So I used noise reduction and EQ plugins, which did help, but there is still a little bit of inconsistency that I wasn't overly happy with. In this area, I think my lack of experience hindered me, and I really would like to work on this and improve it for future projects. Furthermore, I think this issue really stressed to me the importance of consistency and communication on set to try and minimise these problems as early as possible before you even get to those post-production stages.
Hi there, my name is Finlay. I am the editor for Eternal Covenant. My role was to ensure that the film's narrative flowed coherently, that our director Benedict's vision was met, and also my personal vision as the editor was met. Overall, I think I achieved this really well. In particular, I was able to develop new skills in colour grading on a software I had not used before, and the aims I'd set myself previously, I was able to meet them. So, to talk a little bit more about the aims, last semester when I was writing about my role and what I intended to do with the edit, I wanted minimal cutting in the beginning of the film in the interior of the church, as the dialogue was very one-sided, only coming from Jodie. However, when they leave the church and the dialogue becomes a bit more of a back and forth, I wanted the cuts to become more fast and frequent. And I was able to do this in the edit, so that is something I'm rather proud of. Another thing I wrote about was wanting the church to be a focal point of the film. And while I think I achieved this somewhat, I think it could have benefited if we had a bit more coverage, which is something I should have asked for when we were filming. However, I'm still really happy with what we've got. There's a really nice styling shot of the church, which I used to transition between the interior and the exterior, and I also use it in the credits as well. So I think it ties the film really nicely together. In terms of meeting our director's vision, Benedict visited a few times to the Screen Academy, and was always very vocal about what he wanted, which was really helpful for me. But he also allowed me to, still have my own vision as an editor. I think for things I could have possibly improved on, communication-wise, I probably could have been a bit clearer at what stage of the edit I was at, particularly for a producer and also a director. And I also could have done a bit more research prior into what it was like to use DaVinci, as I had used it before, but not for colour grading, and therefore I sort of I went in almost blind. However, I found my footing really quickly, and I was able to produce an end result that I was very happy with. And I think overall I had a really positive experience. I love editing. I've done it previously, and I'm always happy to figure out new things in it and build my confidence, as it is a role I enjoy. And particularly when I'm working with like-minded people who don't constrict me and allow me to have my own sort of vision. So yeah, it's been a really positive experience.
Hi, I'm Danny, and I was the production designer for our film Eternal Covenant. I was responsible for the props, costumes and set design. In pre-production, I read through the script and I underlined what we needed in terms of props and costumes. After that, I made a few prop lists and mood boards for each character and confirmed them with our director. Our characters are very different in personality, so as well as portraying that with the dialogue, we needed to differentiate them visually. Jodie's dark, revealing and alternative style contrasts with Imogen's bright and modest style. Jodie also contrasts with the church, and she is meant to look out of place, as if she doesn't belong. To assist me in my decision making, I read how costumes portray a character, as well as location to portray conflict. In the article, Roles of Costumes in Character Portrayal, it is stated that costumes represent a lot more than just clothing. They are essential for storytelling and adding depth to the characters. Not only can costumes indicate identity, social status, and internal struggles, but they can also help audiences to connect more deeply with the characters. Showing the difference between Jodie and Imogen is to show that they are currently in feud, and they don't align with their religious beliefs. Jodie is a queer character, and she has been discriminated from the church. Her over-accessorizing differentiates her from Imogen. For Imogen, she has a simple necklace and engagement ring. For the engagement ring, I had to search online, as well as for other specific items such as the rosary beads. I found many options on Amazon Prime and got it delivered the next day. For location, we visited our location for group recce, the Corstorphine Parish Church. This meant that our church was a Protestant church, when our script is set in a Catholic church. Changing location would be too difficult, as not many churches around the area were happy to film in their church. Our story deals with religious differences that results in conflict between our characters, and this might not be something that they want to display in their church. But this could be amended by making the denomination of the church less obvious, or changing the script to match our location, and we decided this later. We had meetings with the cast, and we discussed the style of each character. The actress and I talked about whether she had any clothes that would suit our character, and it turns out that both our actresses had many options. They then later contacted our producer and went with their own clothes. We continued with our group meetings, and I went over the script with our director to gauge what he envisioned for our set. We discussed the problems that came up in our recce, and we decided to make the denomination of the church less obvious. This was by hiding the Protestant Bibles in the pews and anything that would give it away. We had a 3-day shoot, and I attended 2 days. In terms of set design, I realised there was not much for me to embellish, as our location had everything that we needed. So I played the role of a general assistant, helping sound design move equipment and stay hidden in scenes, as well as fixing costumes. I believe I did as much as I could do with our location already speaking for itself, but I made myself useful in other areas and made sure that everything ran smoothly in terms of our set and costume.